Let me just get started by welcoming Dr. Kersi Chavda, a consultant psychiatrist at PD Hinduja National, Hinduja Healthcare, and the HN Reliance Foundation Hospitals. He was chairman of the task force of the Indian Psychiatric Society dealing with school psychiatry and counseling. We also have with us Dr. Smita Desai of Drishti, who is an educational psychologist. She's a founder and partner at Drishti. She has unique experiences and qualifications straddling the areas of special education needs and child psychology. Both these eminent panelists have over 3 decades of experience. Once again, welcome to you both, and thank you for taking time to be part of this series of webinars. As is the case in sport, when you have such talented individuals as your panelists, sometimes the best thing you can do as moderator is get out of the way. So very soon I hope to do that. But before I come to that, let me just take you through a little bit of housekeeping issues. We request all of you to kindly register via the chat. Everybody to please stay on mute and put your videos off. Okay? Please stay on mute and put your videos off. I still see people whose videos are on and are not on mute. Once again, everybody stay on mute and put your videos off. Thank you. All questions are welcome in chat. Your chat is to your right or at the bottom. You can start posting your questions right away, and we'd be happy to take as many questions as possible after the first 10 or 15 minutes, during which time the two panelists would have an interesting discussions to kick off today's webinar. Brevity is the mantra for our webinars, and this applies to everybody, including myself, panelists, as well as to the attendees when you're posting your questions and comments. So please keep track of that. Quick shout out to our panelists just to make sure that you are here, your videos and your audios are on. Dr. Kersi Chavda, hello, welcome.
Right now my video is on. Yes, you had muted it.
Oh, sorry for that.
Can you hear me?
Good. We can. Yeah. Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Kersi,
okay.
thank you.
Okay.
Smita, are you here?
Yes, absolutely. And hi, Kersi. It's wonderful seeing you,
Hi,
even though
Smita.
not in person. Yeah. And thank you so much for joining us today. Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Excellent. We just get started with a few questions. The first one is about adolescence, because that's the stage we're really talking about. It's a wonderful stage, and yet it's a stage of significant turmoil. And on top of that, you have this pandemic. So, Dr. Kersi Chavda, if you could sort of briefly share with us an interesting case that might have come to you, you might have seen over the last month during this pandemic.
Okay. So I've had a whole bunch of interesting cases, but one that actually comes into my mind is something that has shocked me, and I do not want to go through it again. You know, I've been in the field for more than 35 years. Like you said quite correctly, I have had a fair amount of experience. About 80 to 90% of my clientele at one time were children and adolescents. Today, about 60% of it is. It's been very, very long since I have lost a patient. It's been very, very long since a patient of mine has attempted or committed suicide. Touch wood, it has not been very common. About 3 weeks before the lockdown, I had a young guy who came to me. He was actually referred by a doctor whose son who had been very depressed and suicidal, and who I had done well by. And the doctor told me that she felt, this was the son's friend, a young 24-year-old. She felt that he was depressed. I evaluated him, got some psychometric testing done. We put him on medication. He came back for a follow-up, seemed a little better. I suggested therapy for him. He started it. The pandemic occurred. The lockdown occurred. Either he chose not to, or he could not, even though I told him that he should be in touch with me, etc., etc. Either he chose not to, or he could not get in touch with me. He could not continue with his medications. And about a week ago, I heard that he had jumped. Horrible state of affairs. Now, he's not actually an adolescent, but I mean, he's just above the age of adolescence. And we are seeing a lot of that. My colleagues and I are seeing an increase in depression. My colleagues and I are seeing an increase in anxiety. A few days ago, I gave a webinar in a school in the 10th standard. And the 10th standard people are absolutely flustered about the fact. A lot of them, for example, in ICSE have got about 6 papers remaining. Envisage a situation, you've done about 5 or 6 papers. Suddenly there's a 1.5 month break, 2 month break, and then you have to appear again for the exams. It's not a good state of affairs. I've got a whole bunch of kids who have done the 12th. They had applied for getting admission abroad. They've got admission abroad. They've got the scholarships that they were looking for. They're slogged and slogged and slogged. And now suddenly they probably won't be allowed by their parents to go abroad. And maybe the universities won't be functioning. It's a new world. It's a new generation. It's not something that we like. And we are seeing more and more of it. And all of us as caregivers have to be, shall we say, equipped to be able to cope with this, because this is not going to go away easily. I mean, it's nice to say that, you know, it's a new generation and we'll come back to almost the way we were, and Indians are resilient and all of that stuff that we are so fond of saying. I'm a little skeptical about it. I do believe that we are going to have a tremendous change in what we are going to see in the future, especially in the field of education. You know, I'm attached to a whole bunch of schools, and some of the principals were telling me, they were saying, what are we going to do? If I've got 40 kids in a class, does each kid sit separately? That means I'm going to have 20. That means I'm going to split it up into, you know, two classrooms, one morning, one evening. Is that going to happen? But then some schools already have a shift system. What are they going to do? There are no shortcuts. I'm sure we'll find a way. I'm not that pessimistic. We've always found a way. But if you're looking at the new normal, I think there's going to be drastic changes in the new normal.
Thank you so much, Kersi Chavda. So I'm good that you brought up what the reality is amongst this population. Incidents of depression, anxiety as a result of sorry, can you hear me? Sorry. So incidents of depression, anxiety as a result of a lot of uncertainty, sudden changes in their environment, in the education system. So Dr. Smita Desai, if I may ask you, what can, for example, teachers in a school do to address these anxieties? Or you could take up the issue of parents. What could parents do, either of these populations? What can they do to deal with the anxieties that an adolescent population, you know, teens would be facing as a result of these myriad sources? Over to you, Smita.
Yeah, so I'll take over the parents first, because in fact, I will continue on the same thread that Kersi was talking about. And that is, you know, the 10th graders, 12th graders, because I've been having a lot of interactions with those kids. And, you know, I've been having these webinars with these children, and also having some individual counseling sessions with the 10th graders and 12th graders. Now, I think one of the first things that's coming from them is this absolute, you know, they're looking at such uncertainty. They don't know what's going to happen. And this is exactly, you know, what a lot of them echoed, that one word, that we're very frustrated. Because, you know, we put in so many hours of work. We don't know when we are going to have to give our exams again. So we're not interested in keeping on studying endlessly, right? And a very smart youngster also said that, you know, how can we be constantly in a state of readiness or preparedness? It's like, you know, you're at the starting block of the race, and the race is never beginning. So these were the words of this youngster. And so it's about the uncertainty. It's like what Kersi said, we put in so much hard work, and suddenly we see like we are all ready to go somewhere and there's nowhere to go. So I think all of that. And apart from that is also this niggling anxiety that what is going to happen in the future and when are we going to get out of this. So again, because I've been also with these kids, I've also been talking to the parents, and what I have been, discussing with them, and what they've also come back to me, what works and what doesn't work. And I think what's working is for, parents to kind of, calm themselves down first, and to be able to listen, to their youngsters, whether it is children, whether it is adolescents, perhaps ask them, okay, what they are hearing, do they need to clarify something? And then, of course, youngsters today have so much exposure on social media, etc. So it's not like you're going to give them any new information. They probably have more information than you do. So I think it's important, one, to listen to them, two, to reassure them that as youngsters, they're less likely to catch this, but they have to be very sure of their safety measures and hygiene. I think validate whatever their fears and anxieties are. And then, of course, make them aware that they also play a role in, keeping themselves and other people in their home, especially the elders, safe. I think what's really also an important role of the parent is to see that some routine or structure is maintained, because what also came from the kids was that we don't have a routine. We don't know what to do on a daily basis. And these are individuals at a developmental stage who have a lot of energy. Okay. So I think parents need to focus on their routine and also ensure that nutrition, sleep, especially sleep, is really taken care of. I know these sound very small and routine things, but this is really what parents can really take care of right now. Yeah.
Dr. Kersi Chavda, anything that you would like to add from a school or a counselor's perspective as to, how they could address these situations? I'm not sure if Kersi is still around. Dr. Kersi Chavda, are you still around?
Maybe sir, he's having some connectivity issues currently. He's just trying to log in again.
Okay. In the meantime, Smita, you could continue with what possibly a teacher can do, maybe.
Yes. So taking it from the teacher's point of view, I mean, let's consider that we are currently on online mode, right? And those schools which are on online mode, it is really difficult for the teacher to be able to reach out to every individual child, or to kind of figure out what is happening, or if, things are going wrong somewhere. Teacher can merely assume that, yes, most of the children will be going through these issues. And therefore, it's a good idea as a part of, the subject work that is being done by the schools and the teachers. I think it's a very good idea at this point of time to include as a part of the daily curriculum about a half an hour where the teacher and perhaps the school counselor in conjunction can have a session with the children on a daily basis, where you talk about different things, because it's this time where we either need to kind of upgrade the levels of resilience that these children have. We're just going to have to build them up and, do things for resilience building. So allow your children to probe their boundaries and, let them know, let them talk about what they're concerned about. And also, reassure them, validate. I think this kind of interaction, and there are a lot of activities. So at Drishti, because we also work with a lot of schools, we are doing that. We're doing a lot of online life skills guidance classes where we're actually just talking about today's situation, right? And we're trying to kind of cut down the levels of anxiety by having children interact, by having them talk about things, and also perhaps interacting about different issues so that children have this opportunity, adolescents have this opportunity to express themselves. And the other thing that teachers can do is, this is also the time where perhaps they can take some time out and probably do small groups of children if time allows them, or if they particularly know that, there have been these 2 or 3 children in my class since before, so I might have red flagged for different issues, they could just be connecting with the parents, right? And also kind of getting a feedback, what's happening at home, how is this child, facing up to these issues, how is this teenager, this adolescent facing up. So I think these are the kind of things that I would recommend that teachers can do, even though we are on an online teaching mode right now. So Kersi's back, and I think Anand.
Request to Miss Meenal. Miss Meenal, I think you have presentation on. Can you please turn your presentation off? Yes, thank you so much. Yes, Kersi, you're back. We were just talking about how teachers or schools actually do something.
There's a bad connection again. Yeah.
Yeah, the trauma caused by the pandemic. How can a school counselor identify this trauma in a situation where you may have children coming back to school, partially coming back to school, or you might be in a situation where you're dealing with these children online? Is there a way that they can identify children who might be trauma?
Okay, there seems to be some problem with the network, so I hope you can hear me properly. But can you so far?
Yes, I can.
You can. Okay. So basically, when we are looking at kids, what we would actually be looking at and what we should be looking at is a change from what they were before. So if a kid was, fairly gregarious and jumping around and laughing and joking, and suddenly he becomes very quiet, very withdrawn, that's a thing that we should be looking at. If a kid, by and large, was not very aggressive and suddenly becomes very aggressive, that's again something we should be looking at. If a kid seems to be very sad, keeps crying sometimes for the stupidest things, seems ultra sensitive about stuff, talks about feeling very tired all the time, talks about aches and pains all the time, that's again something we should be looking at, because we do have this thing called mask depression or smiling depression, which is very common in kids anyway, where the only symptom that they actually have is aches and pains. So, if a kid has aches and pains and constantly goes to the doctor, and the normal physician, and the physician puts him through a series of tests to rule out stuff related to whatever be the cause of the pain, and then they find nothing at all, then it's very, very likely that the somatization that he's experiencing is actually related to something psychiatric. And that is something that teachers very easily can look at. Occasionally, there are really no symptoms. So once in a while, it might actually be a good idea to just talk in general about what had happened, how people went through it, and things like that. And you'd be surprised at what comes out. Now, I'm talking if some important family member has not been affected during the COVID, but we cannot take it for granted. I have, for example, a whole bunch of colleagues who have kids, and some of my colleagues have tested positive and they've been quarantined for 14 days. And given the fact that our kids are not nitwits and they're looking at the television screen and they're figuring out what is happening, it's not surprising that our kids are also getting very frightened, not only at what is happening around them, but actually also at the possibility of somebody they know actually getting infected, or the possibility that that person might get infected in the future. I've had a cop kid, the kid of a cop, who was so very scared because he kept telling me, Papa goes out every morning and he's in touch, and 40 people from our police have got infected. How do I know that Papa won't? And everybody is shouting at him and he's trying to bring in control. Your heart breaks. What do you do at such a time? You just try the best that you can. But yes, it is certainly something that teachers and counselors have to look out for. And I would say one of the biggest things that we should look out for is change from the pre-morbid personality.
Thank you so much. Yes, so that's it's a good tip for the psychologists. We typically have quite a few psychologists attending these webinars, so I'm sure that they will gain from what Dr. Kersi has just shared. Quickly moving on to some interesting questions in the chat. One of them relates to the social environment. Now, obviously children, particularly children at this age and stage, are, very gregarious, really want to engage with the social environment for multiple reasons, as we all know. Now, suddenly things have changed because they are sort of locked down at home, spending a lot of time with family and parents, which they otherwise do not do. So how do you deal with that? How do parents deal with that situation? How do counselors help either children or parents deal with that situation? Either Dr. Kersi or Smita could take that up.
Smita, you want that?
Yeah, okay. So first of all, I think we all know, and I think we need to keep that in mind, that when in the life of the teenagers right now, they're, so to say, what we call developmental tasks is to build up their social skills, their social connections, right? So they're very invested in that. And I think the school closures is really impacting that social connections that they have. I mean, we all know that kids don't go to school only to study. I mean, we want them to study there, but they actually go to meet friends, and that's what they really enjoy. So, and the other, I think, the other task, developmental task, which is really important at this time, is for them to seek their own identity. And that means that consciously or subconsciously, they want to separate themselves from their parents and find their own identity. However, this lockdown is doing absolutely contrary to these two developmental tasks. They are not able to meet friends. They're not able to have their social connections in the usual way. And they are at home with their parents. So what what I could think of at this point of time is, and this is what I've been talking to parents about, is that one, look at this as an opportunity and create that opportunity for family bonding, because you are stuck together. And this is also a stage in life where kids are building up their values of empathy. So why not get them engaged in responsibilities at home? Bring about an autonomous discussion about social responsibilities, and also just make an effort. This is not going to happen without an effort. So make an effort to do one fun, one relaxing thing together as a parent. Probably if you have just teenage kids, you're used to them doing their own thing and you doing your own thing, right? But like Kersi said, whether you call it a new normal or you call it whatever, right now you're in this situation where you've got to make the most of this opportunity. And as a parent, you're going to probably have to do a U-turn, put yourself back into a situation where you've got to put in an effort to make things more interesting, exciting, and also relaxing for all of you. So I would definitely look at this as an opportunity for the family to get together. Just one last thing on when you're working with kids, with your teenagers. I think, they're at the age when they're not going to say, they're not going to take from you, do this or do that, right? They are at a stage where they are wanting to build their autonomy, their own decision making. And so if we really want them to stay at home and do the right things, I think it's got to be more of a discussion. Let them lead the discussion, let them come forth, and imagine what you're doing as a parent. You're actually building up very good young adult decision-making skills. So I think these are some of the things I can think of, Anand, right now. And over to Kersi, I'm sure there's some wonderful things to speak.
Yeah, so I think you've more or less covered most of the stuff that I would normally have talked about. But there are a couple of things that I'd like to add. I am quite convinced that, like you said, if kids can be kind of channelized and their social responsibilities be taken care of, or their social responsibilities be encouraged, they're going to do fantastic work. I'm part of a whole bunch of other organizations in Bombay as well, and we are trying to coordinate between, ration and hospitalization and stuff like that. And I am amazed, absolutely amazed by the number of youngsters who are out there in the forefront. They're running around, they're getting things organized, they are rushing from one place to another, they're serving as couriers, they are, and they're doing all of that smilingly, and they're doing all of that knowing fully well that in a sense they are at risk. I do believe that if somehow we make somebody around us feel good, if somehow we can touch the heart of somebody and express love, even if we don't know the person, it's going to make us feel better, and it's going to get us, especially as teenagers, it's going to make them better people. One of the things that I tell all teenagers who I talk to and all kids who I talk to is that, especially in your building, if you have somebody alone, somebody old who's alone, and he's alone not because he wants to be alone, but because maybe the maid or the person who was looking after him cannot come there because there's no movement of buses or rickshaws, and his kids are abroad, and his siblings are maybe 2 lanes away and they're not allowed to come down, and he's used to going down to the park and chatter with people of his age about how bad the current set of people are and how wonderful life was in the past and all of that goes. We don't talk of social distancing, we're talking of physical distancing. And it is wonderful the way some of our kids in at that age group actually manage to go and chat regularly with these guys. They don't necessarily meet them, and that might actually be good because the person above the age, which absolutely wonderful what they can do. My recommendation very, very strongly to just about everybody is get into a situation where you can get the kids to do something for others, to get into a webinar with others, to get into a Zoom chat with people who who they can kind of support and help through the pandemic. For the younger adolescent who is going to be on the net much, much more than maybe what you'd like him to, please supervise to some extent. My colleagues and I are a little appalled at the kind of pedophilic things also that are happening. Unfortunately, the world is not made up of only good people, and we don't want that at this situation as it exists, that kids can be groomed into doing something that we don't want them to do. So over here, even if they start screaming and shouting about not having privacy, etc., my recommendation very strongly is, at regular intervals, just check and see that the person is not getting sucked into something that afterwards might be very difficult to get out of.
Right.
Thank you very much. I think that's a very, very important tip. It's a subject that I think we dealt with to an extent in last week's webinar with Dr. Sovani, but extremely relevant, particularly for the adolescent population that pretty much resides on the internet, right, for various needs that they have. While we are talking about this, and I'm glad the conversation moved to a more positive frame where we talked about opportunities that pandemic provides. Maybe a little bit more on that from you guys, but while we're talking about it, I just want to share with all our attendees that every weekend we actually have a focused workshop on various topics, and the workshop on this weekend, this Saturday, is on building resilience amongst teens. So anybody interested in attending that workshop, last weekend we had a tremendous response. We had to actually have 2 sessions, one on Saturday and Monday, since we had so many interested. Anyone interested, there would be a link on the chat and you could register there. Looking at the positive side, how do we build resilience? That's something both Dr. Smita, Desai, as well as Dr. Kersi Chavda spoke about, looking at this in a way as an opportunity. And of course, Dr. Chavda also mentioned very appropriately the dangers of life on the internet and what role parents can play over there. There's a very interesting comment on chat that I would like to just bring up here. Is a parent who happens to be alone simply because her husband is not there. She has a daughter in the 11th or 10th grade, has missed half her exams. Daughter is unhappy. What can a single parent do in a situation like this? Dr. Kersi?
Okay, if you're asking me, the single parent has to tell the kid that sometimes life is not fair, and that is the reality of things. That it would be very nice if we could do whatever we wanted to do, but it's not going to happen. The only positive thing in this whole thing is that everybody is affected. So it's not only affecting this particular kid, it's affecting everybody. That's point number 1. Point number 2, if we are going to choose between life and appearing for an exam, I think nobody is going to bat an eyelid. We'll make the choice of not appearing for the exam. And I think that is so very important. And point number 3, which I tell everybody, look at it in terms of a situation of this too shall pass. This is not one of those things which is never going to change. This is not something like a nuclear bomb, and we never know the effects of what is going to happen for many, many, many years. We are going to know that in a month, at the most 2 months, life is going to come back to some resemblance of normal. Yes, it's terrible what is happening, but it's terrible for everybody. So if everybody is starting at that same terrible baseline, it's probably better than you're being the only one who's starting from that terrible baseline. Not that it's going to make you feel better, but at least it makes you feel more equal with everybody else. Now, what can that one single parent do? That one single parent has to be firm and say, yes, life sucks at times, but so what? We got to survive it, and we will survive it. There's absolutely no two ways, nothing in my head which will tell me that kids will not survive, because they will. It will happen. All we need to do is to get into a situation where we kind of say that it could have been much worse. We've got to do the best we can, and eventually we are going to overcome.
So if I can add in over here, Anand.
Please.
I very interestingly, in fact, just about a week ago, I had an interaction with a parent, similar situation. And when I actually got started talking with the young lady, the girl, her fears came, her anxiety was, of course, because of the exams, etc. Her fears came because she had actually lost her dad, 2 to 3 years ago. And so her fear again was that something's going to happen to the mom during the pandemic. Okay, and therefore we had to take it in a from a different angle altogether, and where the mother where I spoke to both of them, and what we worked out is that, well, the mother will have to reassure the daughter that if we take care of ourselves well enough and do what is required, then that is the most that we can do right now. And what I spoke to the mother is exactly what we spoke about earlier, that, get the daughter engaged in doing other things, perhaps engaging in some kind of, social activities which will, bring about empathy. Will she be grateful for what she does have, and being helpful to others? Like Kersi said, I think we all really, it gives us such a good feeling when we have been of help to someone, to anyone at all. Yeah. And this is something that youngsters respond to very well. So this is the kind of it's just an interaction I've just had last week. And so, if there is single parents in those kind of situations, I can also understand what's happening to the youngsters. Okay. So just thought I'd share this with you.
A very interesting question in the chat, both for Kersi and Smita, is a parent of an autistic teenager. Any tips for parent of an autistic teenager who at this point of time is in lockdown? Kersi, first, yes. Maybe, and then Smita.
Yes. I'd like to talk about this because I'm having a whole bunch of situations relating to kids who have autism. Supposing the child was already on medication, he was seeing a psychiatrist and he was already on medication, but because of the fact that he's in a lockdown and his normal routine, which is so very important to him, is not possible. He's not allowed to go out, etc., etc. And he maybe gets a little aggressive, gets a little even violent. I've had one situation in this lockdown where this kid had to be admitted because he had just lost control to such an extent that whatever we did was not working. He was admitted. But we've had a whole bunch of other kids who, with a little bit of adjustment of the dose that they were on, managed to control themselves. But I'd like to share one special case, and I think that's so very important. There's a doctor couple who actually called me up and they said that they have a kid who has autism, and the kid was used to, traveling in his parents' car every evening, and just take a small little 45-minute chakkar in the car and come back, and that was his routine, and he felt very good about it, etc., etc. And now obviously he couldn't go. The parents actually said very sheepishly, they ask me if I could provide them with a letter, because, you know, now we're at a situation where sometimes doctors can say that for medical reasons or whatever, the person is allowed to travel. So they very sheepishly asked me, very, very embarrassedly asked me whether I could give them a letter, because they needed it from a psychiatrist, saying that for the well-being of their kid who has autism, it is necessary that every evening he go out for about half an hour, 45 minutes, and be treated like an essential service. Now, I've obviously dealt with a huge number of kids who have this problem, but something like this brings to us to the forefront as teachers and as doctors and as counselors, the incredible amount of nuances in dealing with kids with special needs. I would never ever have thought in my wildest dreams that something like this would be necessary for me to certify in order for the kid to be living a comparatively normal life. And yes, of course, I certified it. They went to the cop station. The cops were very supportive. In fact, this is really one of the things that we've seen this year, especially in Mumbai. Cops are incredibly supportive. They do whatever they can to help out. They're constantly smiling. I think it's wonderful the work they're doing. So if we are looking at the ASD spectrum, sometimes you do have, even counseling happening online, some amount of special education happening online, but it's tough. Very often, in addition to dealing with the child at that time, we have to deal with the parent and teach the parent what to do, given the various situations that are there, because I think eventually that is what will make the difference. A lot of physical activity is what we suggest. And of course, if there's a need of medication, then go to the psychiatrist or talk to the psychiatrist if he's already going through one, and adjust the dose of the medicines. Smita?
Yeah.
So exhaustive tips, yeah. Smita, if you wish to add something. Thanks, Kersi.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, just a little bit, probably just from my experience with the children with autism that we're working with. And first, of course, I will immediately take off from where Kersi left, and that is that if these kids are on medications, then parents need to first and foremost be very, very careful about that. Ensure that that medication is continued. If there is any issue in terms of, because now they're locked down and they aren't getting maybe what their regular routine used to be, and that's disturbed them further, I think one of the first things that they need to do is to reach out to their medical personnel, whether it's a psychiatrist, neurologist. I think that's one of the first things that the parent can do in a very simple way to kind of keep it very stable. Yeah. And apart from that, I think what has helped, at least with the kids where we are working with and the parents whom I have been interacting with, is to kind of keep the kids engaged in the in domestic routines and responsibilities. So a lot of the chores which they never did before, okay, get them engaged in that. In fact, there were parents who sent me pictures, of the children doing different things at home, right from when maybe some vegetable delivery came at home and taking that in, to arranging stuff in the kitchen drawers, helping set the table. These are all your daily chores, which these kids had not been involved in or engaged in. And therefore, this is what they were doing. And I thought it was great, responsibility taking, even going in the future. I mean, I would say, why would they stop doing this once they get back to their regular routine? So, that's really what I would say, because if you're engaging the child as a part of the daily domestic routine, there is other things that come in, like decision making and a little bit of problem solving, etc. And that has been happening. So that's also been very positive, actually, what's come forward.
I just want to intervene over here because we were talking of medication. The
Yes.
Medical Council of India has just about a month or two ago, permitted e-medicine, permitted prescriptions to be given through the net or through a WhatsApp or through internet. And the chemists are supposed to honor an e-prescription. Most chemists do it. Occasionally, you still have idiots who don't, but by and large, they do. Most medicines which are normally prescribed for aggression and things like that are permitted. There are some medicines which are not, but it's become so much easier now in comparison to what it was 3 months ago. which now means that telemedicine is probably going to be here to stay. So it's going to augment whatever we are doing on a face-to-face. And I think that makes life so much easier for parents who have to have the kid continue on the medication, and because of the difficulties in getting to the clinic, find it impossible to get a fresh prescription. Now they just get this on the net and they are allowed to go to the chemist and the chemist takes care of it. So this is one good thing that has happened because of this pandemic.
Yeah, in fact, Anand, that I would also like to say that, with telemedicine and teletherapy, I think these are just wonderful opportunities that have come up. And this is something which is going to help us reach out to so many more people in need of help. So, going beyond the pandemic also, I think this is something that is paving the way for being able to reach out to a lot of people also with mental health issues, because one of the things with people coming to us is also still a stigma that is there. And people are finding it actually so much more comfortable when they are doing their teletherapy from home. They are just so comfortable in their home environment. It's a comfort zone for them. And that's what I have been realizing in my interactions with the family. So just thought I'd share it going from the telemedicine.
Sure, thank you so much. A request to Ms. Bhavna Jaiswal, you are presenting. Can you please stop presenting, because that's interrupting the webinar. Ms. Bhavna Jaiswal, can you please stop presenting? And everybody else to remain on mute, please. There's an interesting question on the chat. When I took my kid down a few days back, she says, the colony looks like death is approaching. It is scary. Take me home. I was choked up. What does one do in a situation like this?
How old is the kid?
It's just on chat. I'm not sure, but I'm assuming. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Now there are lots of ways to deal with that. I would say that it is, of course, something that needs to be looked at. But we look at it in terms of the age, which is, okay, she's 7. Somebody just put it up. She's 7.
Yes.
I think it's extremely important at this age that the child's fears be addressed, which means that it's absolutely essential for you to kind of give the child a hug and say, yes, I also feel frightened at times, but I have no doubts that we'll be able to get over this, and soon a time will come when we'll be able to come down and see laughter and joy and fun. Right now, it's very frightening. I agree with you, and I don't blame you for being frightened, and I don't think that you're weak for being frightened. Okay, something about loss of grandparents recently also. So that has certainly aggravated the situation. It is in a situation like this, rather than just give a generalized idea as to what is happening, what we should be doing. It sounds like this little kid needs a little bit more specialized counseling and therapy. So my very strong recommendation is to actually seek the help of a counselor, because there has been a loss of much loved grandparents recently, compounded with what is happening right now. There is very likely to be a tremendous state of insecurity in the little one, and she's going to need professional help to get over whatever she's going through. So I prefer not to just say in generalities. I'm going to say that it is absolutely essential, and it will be very strongly recommended for you to actually go for a one-to-one with this little kid.
And if I can add in something here, Anand, this is exactly the situation where a crisis situation can turn into a traumatic experience for the child. So although we are all in a situation which is a crisis, a situation which so directly impacts the child, or she's seeing, the loss of a very significant other, this is when it can turn into a traumatic experience. And I fully agree with Kersi that this is the time to seek out some individual help. Earlier the better, because you're then going to be nipping it in the bud. And this is, not something that you want the child to carry forward and re-experience, and all those things about trauma that get on with it. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Before we get to the next question, once again, just a reminder to all the attendees, in case you all are interested in attending the weekend workshop, which is on resilience, building resilience among teens. It's this Saturday, which is 23rd of May in the evening. please do register via the link in chat. Let me just quickly come to the next question. This is about identity. This is the age when teenagers and adolescents are seeking out their identity. Now, obviously, opportunities are far less in a lockdown situation. How can a parent help the child from a positive perspective, right? How can a parent help the child build their own identity in the time that they are locked in at home? Kersi?
Okay, so now this is a slightly tricky one, but when we're looking at the feeling of identity, we are actually looking at kids who are finding ways of defining their difference from the most important caregivers in their life. When they are young, whatever mom and dad say is sacrosanct. They never question them. Mom and dad are like gods, etc., etc. As time goes on, they are anything but gods. They are stupid and they don't know what they're talking about. We get into a situation where in order for them to found their own identity, they need to find a group. They need to find a kind of a fulcrum around which to build their lives. In the normal state of affairs, you would have groups of people who study, groups of people who enjoy a particular kind of music, groups of people who may be into bodybuilding and stuff like that, and group of people who are the chaps who just, lean against walls and whistle at people passing up and down. All of that is going to now stop. All of that now is not possible, which might be a good thing, but it's certainly something that is disruptive in the normal in the normal sequence of events which takes place, which allows an identity to be formed. What can parents do? Parents just have to supervise and see that there are groups happening on the net where kids are in touch with people, with their peers, hopefully support them, hopefully encourage them in doing things. I'm quite thrilled also because I have had very, very positive stories of how kids who were not very much into exercise are being pushed into doing more and more exercise by their other friends who are kind of motivating them by telling them what they are doing and what they should be doing. We do know that one of the most important things that channelizes the excessive energy that is seen in teenagers is exercise. And yes, we are restricted because we can't go down and sometimes there are 10 people in a room and so on and so forth. But you should still attempt to get some exercise in your routine. So to come back to the question, parents can attempt to give a little bit of privacy to the kids. Parents can attempt to ensure that the kids are having groups where they're talking to their own peers about various things happening in terms of forming an identity, and that is what will make the difference.
Yeah, before Smita adds to this, since we are running into the last phase, Kersi, if I may request you, if any of the participants wish to get in touch with you, how can they do that? If you can just put in your coordinates in chat, that would be really helpful. While
sure,
Smita,
I will do so.
Smita takes forward the same question. Smita, go ahead.
Yeah, so in fact, I think I addressed this thing about, the seeking identity and the fact that, teenagers now are looking at the point where they want to define themselves as different from the parents. And this is the time where I think parents can, I may just be repeating myself, but they give them an atmosphere of autonomy, provide them with responsibilities that they hadn't taken up before, allow them to make the decisions as to what they would like to take up and not. And I think this would really help towards them defining their identity, and also parents not being portraying themselves as something which is a kind of a push down image. I think that's really important right now.
Okay, there's an interesting question in the chat that I'm going to just read out. I have a situation: taking care of the needs of a bubbly teenage girl in conjunction with an elder brother who has cerebral palsy, and then a possessive grandmother of hers who's very concerned about her brother this leads to quite a lot of melancholy, which needs us both as parents to tackle. Pretty confusing situation, although I think that two of you have seen enough of this to sort out this quagmire. So,
Yeah, Kersi, you're going for it, and then I get on.
Yeah, okay. So let's look at 2 or 3 things here. First of all, of course, you have the grandparents who are getting affected, and because the grandparents are affected and there are 3 generations inside the same house, it's almost as if the kid who doesn't have special needs is penalized for not having special needs. And we do see that happening at times in families where you have special kids. I think it's essential for the parents. So we're looking at it in terms of 3 generations, right? You're looking at the kid and the special kid, you're looking at the parents, and then you're looking at the grandparents. Over here, the parents have to take over. However much we might respect the grandparents, it is absolutely essential for the parents to kind of take over and lay down the rule. It is not a sign of disrespect towards their parents. It is a sign of their telling them that this far and no further, you know what you're doing the best you can. Yes, you will take the support and the help of the grandparents, but eventually if they are doing or saying things well-meaningly, which are having a deleterious effect on the mind of the so-called normal child, then you have to intervene and you have to say that this far and no further. If it causes skirmishes, so be it. The normal kid should not be made to apologize or feel apologetic for not having a problem. And we don't want a situation where she lands up getting either depressed or angry or frustrated or running away or rebellious or something of the sort, which might just happen. Over here, especially if you're living with your in-laws, maybe daddy has to take in a little more positive step. Mummy would kind of course, support daddy, but daddy will probably have to break the ice. Too bad if the grandparents don't like what is happening. Over here, the most important person is that so-called child who is normal and who is traumatized with what is happening.
Okay, what I can add in further to what Kersi has said is that, what I can recommend to the mom is that, like Kersi said very rightly, if the dad is the one who can kind of break the ice with his own parents and, put his foot down and, this much and not further, etc. I think what the mom can also do, and both parents, in fact, is, reach out to the girl herself and kind of get her to talk and listen to what her thoughts and feelings on the whole thing are. And as much as possible, get her engaged in doing something which she considers to be important at home. Okay, so if we get to know what's important to this young individual and, allow her again the autonomy to decide, what are the things that I'd like to do for others, for myself, I think that is going to really help this young lady to feel so much better for herself and to view her situation in a very positive light. So that's something further than what, just a little bit to add to what Kersi said.
Yeah, there is, just for the benefit of everybody, I think Dr. Kersi Chavda has very generously put up his cell number as a coordinate where he can be contacted, but please WhatsApp as he has mentioned here, and you may also refer to this webinar. I'll quickly take another question here where a child needs therapy. However, since the child is sitting at home and needs to be assisted through the internet, there are others who are present in the home environment, right? So what can a counselor do in a situation like this where the child is in a home environment, not very comfortable since there are so many people around, but yet is seeking out help? The counselor clearly sees the child reaching out for help, but is simply not able to open up because there are so many people around. Is there any easy way around this?
Smita, what do you do?
Yeah. So we have had these cases, and right now when we need to reach out, we are absolutely going to be depending on teletherapy. Now, this could be, we could be doing a video conferencing like that, or we could also do it on phone, you know. And we do know that there are other people around, but I think that is something which is going to become a responsibility of the parent, that, to create that little bubble where the child is able to have a conversation, whether telephonically or on the video with the counselor, and perhaps also do parent and child together. That really is, that is the way that is going to help us.
Kersi?
I would actually go with what Smita said. The only other thing that I might think of is, which has worked in some situations, when supposing there is a possibility of a parent going into another room but choosing not to go into another room, I actually get the parent to come into the screen, and I request that the parent leave, and I say it will make more sense, and afterwards we can discuss whatever has to be discussed, but right now please allow some privacy happening to your child. Most parents do allow that. Now, this is possible, of course, only if there is place. There has been a time when I have had a child who was talking on a mobile, and she says, "Doc, I'm going to be sitting in my bathroom because that's the only place where I have, privacy."
Yes.
And she sat in the bathroom, and she did it. And she used earphones, so people could not really understand what was being asked and things like that. And she spoke softly. It worked. Necessity is the mother of invention. I think we just have to try to be as inventive as we possibly can.
Absolutely.
Excellent. I think, honestly, to me, this has been an absolute masterclass. I think two people with a tremendous amount of experience in this space, particularly with this population, and I'm not with it with any form of immodesty. I really enjoyed this. I hope that everybody attending the session also has enjoyed this. Again, those who are interested in attending the weekend workshop, please do register. Any queries, you can stay back in the next 15 minutes. We'd be happy to answer those queries for you. Dr. Kersi Chavda has been generous enough to put his coordinates in chat. Please feel free to get in touch with him over WhatsApp if you wish to refer also to the webinar. Kersi, much thanks for spending time with us and being here to address some very interesting questions I thought that come up. Any concluding remarks that you wish to make?
Yes, I do have a couple of concluding remarks. I think the most important concluding remark that I have is for everybody, especially the ladies of the house, who unfortunately are going to be thrust into a situation where they have to look after by and large, look after the cooking and look after the groceries and look after the in-laws. Dads will help. But ladies, please don't become superhuman. Don't become superwoman. Ask for help. Delegate stuff. It may not be up to your exacting standards, but it is stupid of you not to take the help that is available. Please seek help. This is going to last for a long time period. We do not want you to run down. We do not want you to feel tired. Frankly, the woman is the more strong person in any couple. So the woman has to be stronger, but that also means that she has to delegate. It's been a pleasure talking to all of you. Stay safe, stay happy. We will overcome. This too shall pass.
Thank you, Kersi.
Thank you so much, Kersi. Yeah. First, I'd like to thank Kersi for coming on. And it's, of course, always been a pleasure. We've known each other for a long time. And, look forward to, again, working together through these issues. But apart from that, I'd like to end on a note that, the population we were talking about today, the youngsters, the adolescents, teenagers, are an absolute delight, when you actually take away those glasses and, stop getting irritated with what they're doing or like get shocked by what they're doing. When you actually sit down and just chill out yourself and listen, just listen to them. It's an absolute delight, being with them. And again, as Kersi mentioned, I think they're capable of doing such wonderful things. So this is an opportunity to be able to help them improve on their own self-esteem, help them capitalize on their strengths and do a lot of things that they would enjoy. So yeah, thank you everyone. And I do hope to see people on the weekend workshop. I am the one who will be conducting this workshop on resilience in teenagers. So as much as we can do to prepare ourselves for how we can help people right now as well as in the near future, that's really the purpose of this entire workshop. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. We are still here. The rest, we will be here for another 10-15 minutes. Address any queries that you may have. Panelists, free to leave. Thank you.